The Moody Blues turns back time and comes face to face with death itself. Greetings, my good friends. It's time to take a look at another episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. A very shocking episode which gives us the conclusion of the battle between Doppio and Risotto. At the end of the last episode, Risotto was riddled with bullets from Aerosmith, and in a last-ditch effort, he tries to take out the boss's doppelganger. But of course, this doesn't really end up working out for him because Doppio has access to King Crimson, and this only leads to Risotto getting shot even more by the power of Narancia's plane. And while all of that stuff is well and good, this episode featured one of the most shocking moments from the entire season. And I'm gonna go ahead and put up a major spoiler warning right here. If you haven't watched this episode, go check it out and then come back to this review. Good? Alright, here we go. So, this episode featured a major death. One of the members of Bruno's gang is brutally killed in an instant in this episode. And it's none other than the user of Moody Blues himself, Leone Abbacchio. That's right, he ends up suddenly getting killed by Doppio in this episode, in what might be one of the most out-of-nowhere death scenes that I have ever seen. And they kind of had to do it. I mean, Leone Abbacchio was going to be able to use the power of Moody Blues to finally figure out who the boss was, and we still have a number of episodes until we actually get to the finale, so they had to find some way to at least incapacitate him or make it so that they can't figure out the identity of the boss. And really the only option apparently was Doppio actually killing him, and he does it all with King Crimson, who basically just punches directly through his body, impaling him with his very own fist. But the build-up to this scene is honestly what I think was the best part of this entire episode. This slow crawl to seeing what sort of danger is slowly going to be awaiting Abbacchio. I especially loved how it was juxtaposed to this one scene of all of these kids who were playing soccer on the beach, who seemed like they were really annoying Abbacchio. Their ball ends up getting stuck in some branches, and he decides to help out. He even has a big smile on his face while he does it. It shows again that while he comes across as very crass and honestly gets really pissed off about the most minor of things, at the end of the day, he likes to help people. It comes from his background of wanting to be a police officer. But before Moody Blues can go back in time and figure out who the boss truly was, suddenly he is punched and killed. And this segues into this flashback sequence, which is not so much a flashback as it is sort of this like weird moment where he actually connects with his former officer, one who was actually killed in the line of duty, who reassures Abbacchio that he was a great police officer, he was a great person, and he shouldn't be beating himself up over his past. It's a really solid moment, but honestly, the tears started flowing when we got to see the entire gang react to the death of Abbacchio. This moment absolutely tore me up, especially Narancia's reaction to all of this. Narancia being, I think, the youngest member of the group, either him or Giorno, it's understandable why he actually reacted the way that he did. He didn't want to leave his body behind. He couldn't believe that he could possibly be killed. He was begging Giorno to use his powers to bring him back to life. But, as I imagine, if you are dead, there's nothing that Golden Experience can do to actually fix the actual damage. And the salt in the wound is the fact that they can't even really recover his body. They're going to have to escape. It's only a matter of time before the boss's goons, or even Doppio himself, decide to actually try and stop them. However, Abbacchio did leave one clue behind. He left a death mask, or an impression on this rock, this fountain, which actually shows them the very face of the boss. And it's the first time that we've actually seen any sort of like vision of this character, and it's kind of undetailed because of the way that it's actually executed, but it's our very first look at the character, and he does look distinctly different than Doppio. I'm imagining he's still gonna have the same hair color, but he's got like a different haircut, it's a little spiky, but even in death, Abbacchio was able to help out his friends. So, What's the rundown on this episode of Golden Wind? I really liked this episode despite the fact that it was a little long-winded. But it's the type of episode that makes you reflect on the character and all of the time that you spent with them. And while Abbacchio, for the most part, has just been a hard-ass throughout most of the series, he's one of my favorite characters from the show. I've absolutely loved his stand, the fact that it allows him to be an investigator, and that goes perfectly with his background of wanting to be a police officer. He's such an integral member of the team that going forward, they're going to have to come up with some extreme strategies in order to find out more about the boss's identity. And it's going to change the dynamic. They're not going to be able to use the Moody Blues as power anymore, so they've been severely weakened. I mean, that's 2 members of the group down. I don't think Panicotta Fugo is coming back. A lot of the commenters have said he's basically been written out of the series, and now that Abbacchio is gone, well, we're basically down to the bare bones of Giorno, Mista, Narancia, and Bruno. And while I think these characters are incredibly capable, they've been severely wounded by this episode. And man, this episode also just had some insane, brutal moments that proved yet again that the JoJo series is creative, but it's also really fucked up at the same time. There's this one scene when they're actually trying to track down the attacker, or at least the one that they think it actually is, and they make it seem like Doppio is actually sneaking around these rocks, and both Bruno and Narancia actually end up finding this person behind these rocks, which doesn't end up being Doppio, but ends up being this kid who's been severely beaten and had his mouth sewn shut with his very own shoelaces. This show is so unapologetic when it comes to damaging and hurting a lot of the characters, women, small dogs, and children. No one is safe in this series, and the scene just reaffirmed the fact that Doppio himself, or the boss, have got to be one of the most disturbing villains from the show. I have to say, that scene was actually kind of off-putting, and I didn't really care for it, but again, like I said, it really proved like how insane the boss of this organization is, and how far he'll actually go to protect his very own identity. But ultimately, this is the episode which will be known for one major thing: the death of Abbacchio. And the way it was handled again was done in that classic JoJo style. I love the final shot of the episode of seeing Abbacchio like hanging out in the clouds above them on the beach. It's kind of reminiscent of how like the characters died in Stardust Crusaders. We actually got to see their ghosts in the sky. It kind of had that same feeling and invoked that same art style, and I loved it. It's just so freaking atmospheric. What more can I say about this episode? It's a really important one that you definitely need to check out. It is something that you cannot miss. If you skip this episode, you're just going to be like, where the fuck is Abbacchio? You have to check this episode out. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5, even with the fact that the episode was kind of slow. It was just such a hard-hitting episode. But you got my thoughts about it. I want to hear yours. What did you think about this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind? Did the death of Abbacchio shock you? Or did you have any favorite moments from this episode? How are the gang going to function going forward? And what do you want to see from the rest of the series? Thank you for watching this review. I'll see you all next time. And as always, stay down, baby.